I'm Rick, and I want to talk about a prototype speargun I've built. I've named it Blue Ass, and it's a light inertia gun for use in blue water. What I'm hoping for is a trade-off between long distance accuracy and manoeuvrability. When I built the gun, what I had in mind was wahoo, but it should also be suitable for bluefin tuna, other tunas as well, medium size. The extra weight provides a more stable platform to launch the spear and should result in higher accuracy. Trouble is, a bigger gun's harder to push down through the water, and it's also harder to carry through airports if you're travelling. Some people argue that in an inertia gun, you should have a lot of weight up front, but this also creates extra water drag, extra water resistance, and makes it harder to swing the gun, so you lose a little bit of manoeuvrability with it. So for this gun, I thought I'd try something with relatively light at the muzzle. For this particular exercise, I used a rife spear with a single flopper head. In use, I'd probably be using a slip tip, but I wanted to do a bit of target shooting first, and it's much easier to use this kind of head than it is to use a slip tip. The spear is held in place and released nicely using a reverse mech. Because this gun's a prototype, not a final, I made the forward trigger out of PVC plastic and push rod out of 1/4" stainless. It's a prototype, first of a kind. If it works, I'll make others. But because it's an experimental gun, I decided to make it out of pine. Now, there's nothing wrong with pine, it just hasn't got a sort of a fancy reputation, but it's quite good structurally for making spear guns, and some of the pattern, I reckon, matches that of even fancier woods. In line with this being an experiment, I used Titebond 3 to glue it. Titebond 3 should be waterproof. It says it's waterproof on the packet, but I'm not completely sure about it. So this is a bit of an experiment too. I used a router to cut the spear channel and used a roundover bit to round off the edges. The rest of it's shaped by hand, using hand tools. Shaped the handle to fit my hand. Fits my hand exactly. Fiberglass plasterer's tape on the handle as anti-slip, also on the butt. And I put a little bit on the muzzle just in case the pine isn't really strong enough to take that stress. It's an open muzzle, and the shooting line's held down by a pin. Nothing fancy, this is a prototype. This hook is to wrap your forefinger around when you hug the gun to your chest and you're diving. You take your forefinger off and extend the gun to shoot. But before then, you want it as close to you as possible. I did the basic seal job on the timber using penetrating epoxy. Once I had the timber sealed, I could then balance and check the buoyancy on the gun. Pine is a low density timber, and I had to add a fair bit of lead shot embedded in resin to make it neutrally buoyant. In fact, a bloody lot. The gun just sinks with the tip dropping down. But that makes it neutral, like no weight in the water, but gives it a fair bit of mass which resists the forces of recoil and helps the spear to fly true. Once the lead was in, it was time to finish the surface. I used 2-pot floor varnish and painted over the top of the epoxy. But before I did that, I used a felt pen to put on the name. I called it Blue Ass because I was running around like a blue ass fly at the time. And I coloured the gun to match with a bit of water stain. The gun's currently rigged to work with a tethering rig. You tie the float line onto there, and the line there would go through to the shock absorber mounted onto the gun. Tethering rig's quite okay where there's no sharks around, but if there's sharks around, you like to have that empty spear gun in your hand later on when the fish is struggling near the spear, and if a shark comes in, you've got something to poke it away with. I'll be able to put a rubber through here and put on a rife style breakaway there, should I want one. How does it shoot? Dunno, haven't tried yet. I'll certainly try it with a target first. I'm also building another gun, the same length and very similar dimensions, but with a bit more mass up the front and some risers, and it'll be very interesting to compare the two to see how they shoot compared to each other. And also how well they handle, how easily they swing through the water, how easily you can track a fish. Is it one of the prettiest of my guns? Has it got a lot of wow factor? Probably not. But for a prototype, I'm not worried too much about it. If it works really well, or if I get ideas on how to do some other stuff as well, I'll go on and start making one out of hardwood with a bit more wow factor. One thing I do notice about it is it's bloody heavy. I know it's meant to be an inertia gun, but it does feel pretty heavy, so carrying it around could be a bit darn awkward. Pushing it down through the water might be a little bit tricky too. Might not be the sort of gun you want to push down 30 metres.